Hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. It's Kimberly and Tim Scott back here in our kitchen cooking it up for you on communication today. Communication is on the menu for our topic.
Are we going to do a cooking motif?
Yeah, motif. I haven't seen you cook for a while, Tim Scott, but you have some skills.
I cooked at Christmas time, sort of.
What are we talking about here when you say cooking it up? That could mean a lot of things.
Yeah, well,
cooking up trouble, cooking it up in the kitchen. See, that's
we'll
why
leave it at that.
that's why communication is important. Sometimes words mean different things for different people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you are a human being, you have relationships. And if you have relationships, and by the way, just in case people don't know, you are human beings.
If you're a human being,
If you're a human
if you're not AI.
Yeah, so even actually with our dogs, we have to communicate. But with human beings, we're going to talk about
Yes.
communication is so critical, and it affects every single relationship. It affects jobs. It affects, everything we do. Communication is essential. I mean, if you want to be a hermit and live by yourself, you're going to be miserable. God said it's not good for man to be alone.
Be alone, right.
So,
But at least they won't be
communication
making
is
anybody else miserable.
key. Yeah, well, you're right.
That's me being positive again.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to this new series we're starting on communication.
Yeah. Well, if you've been listening to us for any time at all, which we're in the hundreds now of episodes, and thanks for not getting sick of us.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talk about a lot is our favorite reads, our favorite books, and you especially, Tim, working in the secular world and in the church. One of the most important pivotal moments in your life was going through what is a secular book called Crucial Conversations, and that was a turning point for you in your leadership style. In the home, in your workplace, at church.
Yep.
And so it's been a valuable tool that you continue to give away. And so we're working that into this message because we can't not. It's a huge part of our foundation for communication.
Yeah. We have a verse that I don't know how often we bring it up, but pretty often because it's a big deal to us. And I think you learned about this verse long before I met you, and I learned about it long before I met you. And it's just this amazing, powerful truth about communication. You want to read that for us?
So simple too. Proverbs 18:21. It says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." So think about that. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who eat of it will have the fruit of either death or life. So you choose basically which direction you want to go. And the tongue, the words that we speak, have that ability to bring life or death to ourselves and to others.
Yeah, every time you say words of death to someone that loves you, they eat the fruit.
Right.
If somebody doesn't care, you don't have the power of death and life in somebody who doesn't care about you.
Right.
Because those who love it will eat the fruit.
Right.
So if they love what you say, think about this.
Or they care.
Parents, they care what you say. They love and care about what
Yeah.
you say. Think about this. Your children are born into this world dependent on you, and they love you and you love them, and that nurturing transaction is powerful. And then so at age 5 years old, when they're being knuckleheads and you start calling them names, they love what you say. And so that just goes, when you say terrible things to them, that's death to them.
Yeah.
When you say words of life, it's life to them because they love. Now, if you talk to some other kid, they may not, may hurt them for a moment, but not like the power of your own child.
Right. And that's what I love about this passage is it speaks to the power of our words. Uses the word power. So we're so flippant sometimes, aren't we? Like in our casual conversations of the things we say, sometimes we don't even recognize what we're saying as having power. But my gosh, does it ever have power to bring life or death? It can change a room in a second, and it can raise people up, and it can crush the hearts of people around you, whether you love them or not. But I was going to say, I want to speak to something, because it talks about in that verse about how, and you were saying how it impacts others. Your words actually, whether they're life or death, impact you as well. So even though you're feeling like in a moment of anger, you're getting rid of and you're getting off your chest, and you have a right to say what you know, your anger is delivering in your tongue, and you're bringing down that person that you believe deserves it. Those words actually coming out of your heart, they're not gone. That weighs in your spirit, and if it's in your mind, you're actually bringing death to your own self by speaking those words
that's
out.
a good point. So it's not just others,
Right.
it's you.
Right. And it's important to be able to communicate that you're feeling some kind of way. I'm a big advocate of communication.
Yeah, speaking truth is
but
valuable.
it's how you say it.
Well,
yeah.
so Scripture says, "Speak truth in love."
Right.
And the how is probably more important than the what. Here's a few thoughts about this before we get into what a crucial conversation. And by the way, what we're doing is I'm going to, it used to bug me. That's 3 sentences without finishing one of them. But it used to bug me that my dad would read these books, and then I would never hear anything about them. And I was like, "Dad, tell me about that book you read."
Yeah.
And he go, "Oh, you interested in that?" And I said, "Yeah." So anyway, I say that because in reading Crucial Conversations with my staff and staff that I've had over the years, I've had most of my staff go through that. I shared that with them, and I think it's so important. We want to share this book with you. So we're going to take, out of all the chapters, we're going to take a few chapters and we're going to highlight some really important points and then add our own stuff into that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's happening. And in chapter 1 of Crucial Conversations, some of the things that we're going to share today come out of that. And I say that because I wanted to share this, is that our life is about people. And a meaningful life involves communication, right? But think about how often we deal with conflicts.
Right.
I wish my wife and I, Kimberly and I, because she's sitting right here, I don't want to talk about her like she's not
scared?
in the room. Yeah, I'm getting nervous. I wish we always agreed with me. I mean, we always agreed. I'll just leave it at that. And the reality is we don't always agree.
We often disagree. Let's be honest.
We do often
We
disagree
often, because we are such.
You don't see it my way.
We're such different personalities, and that's real life.
Right.
That's humanity.
Right.
So
that's conflict.
right.
And when
potentially
you have
conflict.
well, just disagreeing is
Right.
conflict. It's conflict in view.
Right.
What you do with that conflict determines whether it's going to be a battle or
Right.
not. You don't have to battle over every conflict.
Exactly.
But you are going to have conflict. That's the reality of communication and relationship. And you can avoid dealing with problems, but there's a great cost. Or you can attack when there's a problem, and attack the other person.
There's a great
There's
cost.
a great cost
Yeah.
with that. The only way to enter and stay in a great relationship is to have healthy communication. That's the only way.
Right.
And that takes work.
It does.
And, when you're two healthy people, it's less work. But when you're flawed, the more flaws you have, the more work it's going to take. So anyway, what this book was written about was when a casual conversation all of a sudden becomes a crucial conversation.
Right.
And so what's the definition of a crucial conversation?
It would be 3 separate things. First would be having opposing opinions, which we just
It could
talked about.
happen, right.
Disagreeing with someone. That's the setup for a crucial conversation right there. The second would be high stakes issues. In other words, topics
Things
that
that
you're
matter.
passionate about.
Yeah, you're passionate,
Right. The third would be emotions run strong, which is also along those lines. So it's a very emotionally driven topic, and there's a lot at stake.
Yeah, so let's say you're at work. Now, actually change that. Let's say you're in a Bible study, and the Bible study is about marriage. And for some reason, current events on the news come to your mind in that Bible study or that small group or whatever you call your groups in your church. We call them growth groups in ours,
Right.
and or life groups. And whatever yours is, you decide to address a political issue. You're going to have opposing opinions.
We don't recommend, by the way.
This is a mistake. That's not why you're
Probably always
Yeah.
in every setting.
there. Yeah, and it's fine to do that in some settings and where the purpose is right, but
But you're looking for an opposing opinion and a potential crucial conversation.
You're going to have opposing opinions, and you're going to have a high stakes issue because people are vested in that, and emotions run really high.
Right.
So if that's the case, guess what's going to happen to the conversation about marriage? It's going to be sidetracked. And guess what? You no longer have credibility to talk about marriage because you're talking about, partisan politics. A huge mistake because it's not the purpose of the meeting.
Right.
Now, that's not to say politics aren't important. They are important. You, in your country, want to be a patriot and you want to be involved in the process. And so here we are in the United States, and the polarization of political views has been higher in the last 5 to 10 years over my whole lifetime. It's been a crazy decade of conflict. And, one side wants to get their way, but that's what we call a crucial conversation. How are you going to deal with that? And there's a real important issue, and that's this: leg time. Leg time. What I mean is, if you allow time to, let's say, Kimberly and I get
stepping
in an
away
argument.
from the whole political thing, though. This is not in connection with that at all.
That's right. Yeah. I
This
didn't
is
make
about any crucial
That was
conversation.
a really bad transition.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to separate it.
That's good. So Kimberly and I are discussing something, and we have a conflict, and we decide not to talk about it then. But the conflict still is there, but it's unresolved. That's what we call leg time. And it could be a day, it could be an hour, it could be a week, it could be 6 months, it could be, seemingly never. And the problem with leg time, to address a clear problem, is we tend to wait to address that problem, and it doesn't get smaller.
We avoid
Usually
it.
it gets larger. So there are 3 ways to handle a crucial conversation, and that is this: you can avoid it, and the price you pay if you avoid it is things become larger, and you don't have full harmony in your relationship. Or you can face it and handle it poorly, which, by the way,
Impulsively.
or emotionally. So, it becomes emotional, and your conflict, and the price is that you increase the problem. And not only do you increase the problem, you tear down the relationship, or you can face it and handle it well. And this is what we want to see happen in communication. We want to face it and handle it well. Now,
Wait, the byproduct of that, though, is what you do is you produce increased trust by doing that,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
influence and intimacy in the relationship, which
Absolutely.
is so important.
yeah. So think about this. If you don't face that problem, it's because the conflict is too intense, and you want to not deal with that. Here's what I would suggest: is there are some times that the emotions are running way too high to have a civil conversation. Back off of that conversation and say, okay, we disagree. Let's take some time to cool off so that we can talk with civility.
Right.
And that there's nothing wrong with that, but don't let it go on forever.
Right.
And that will produce, as Kimberly said, it'll produce trust.
Right.
It will produce influence in the person you're trying to communicate with, and it will produce intimacy. And by
Right.
the way, you need intimacy in all your relationship, not just your spouse, not just your family, but your coworkers. Intimacy is really critical for healthy relationships.
Right, absolutely. So it's important to communicate that you seek to improve your relationship and not just necessarily win an argument. So I feel like that's groundwork right there. Is entering into a crucial conversation. Is that you need to let them know your intent. That you're in a safe place. My goal in this conversation, though we may disagree from the get-go, is for you to understand that I want to improve our relationship and not just win over in an argument.
Yeah.
And how do you create that? I was just thinking, like, as you were talking, like, I know for me, what comes in those moments is a sense of safety. Like, I just need to feel like I'm safe to disagree with you without feeling attacked back. And that comes from being a good listener.
Yeah.
Listening to someone before you jump in.
That desire to win comes from a competitive heart and maybe some ego
Insecurity,
damage and
yeah.
insecurity and so forth. But I've had a lot of competitive relationships. My brother Dan and I were competitive with each other.
Yeah, it starts young.
Yeah, and I've tried to compete with my siblings. I've competed with coworkers. I've competed with I've competed with everybody, and that desire to win, that competitive spirit, is strong in some people. And when you are married to somebody who's a competitor, that person has got to learn, or if you are a competitor, you have got to learn how to not concern yourself with a win. Communication is not about competition. Communication is about connection.
That's good.
And so think first about the connection, not about the win. It will destroy your relationship, especially marriage.
Right. And I would say if you plan on entering into one of those crucial conversations, you got to first recognize, do I even have the right to speak into this person's life? Because otherwise, if your point is just to go in and obliterate them with your point of view, you're going to walk away with, I mean, what's your goal in the game? To feel better and walk away after you've dumped, all the ways you feel about some things. But the point is, if you're going to have like a relationship that's ongoing, have you actually earned the right to speak into this situation, into their life? Like, measure that first.
Yeah, earning the right. And I've shared this before. Kimberly had children when we got married that were not my biological children, and I wanted to reach their heart. And I realized I had to earn that right to speak into their life. So I was not at first a disciplinarian. In fact, I don't know I ever took a strong disciplinarian role, and that's kind of who I am. But I really took time to bridge with their heart. And that gave me the right to speak into their lives. Kimberly and I did that in our marriage. We did that with our children. We do that with our friends. And you have to earn that right to speak into people's life. That's so good.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, when a crucial conversation happens without warning, it seems like the first instinct we have is self-protection. Of course, that's
I might
natural.
feel that way sometimes.
I think it's a human thing, which can lead to attacking others. We tend to hide our faults. Oh, this is really common, exaggerating to win the argument in that heat of the moment, and then maybe even lying to discourage more attacks. Those are all like that sense of being cornered, and so you're like pulling out all the tools, to self-protect. It's really what it is. The foundation of it is self-protection. That's not how you want to do it. That's not how you want to engage.
I found myself in the middle of a conversation realizing I'm being self-protective. I'm not really communicating other than to protect myself. So if I can divert attention, hide my faults by saying, no, there's the problem over there, or what about that, or you don't know what I'm going through right now, instead of taking responsibility.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Right.
This instinct of self-protection is so strong. We have a difficulty sympathizing with the person we're speaking to. So if I'm in a self-protected mode, all I can think about is getting through this conversation, like we talked about a moment ago, with a win.
Right.
And I'm not really concerned about how that person feels. There is something powerful to sympathize with the person you're speaking to. What are they hearing from me? How are they feeling about what I'm saying?
Right.
Look at their body language.
Yeah.
You can see it. Are they looking you in the eye? Is there any kind of peace in their heart, or do they look afraid? Do they look intimidated? Do they look angry?
Right.
You're not reaching their heart if you're seeing that.
Right.
You need to reach their heart,
Right.
and they feel safe, and then the communication flows well.
So the benefits of communication skills to your relationship are, number one, you're going to find that you have increased influence and intimacy. And so if you can grab hold of these tools early on, God bless you. You know, when you're starting in a relationship with someone, and that could be, like we've said, any relationship, you know, coworker, dating, marriage, whatever. If you're practicing these tools from the get-go, you have a fast forward button to building a stronger relationship, because your influence is increased and you've immediately connected in intimacy. But most often, these are skills that you acquire by failure.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, you get back up. Some people are just naturally great communicators and are not defensive. But I would say in every combination, there's going to be a mix of both. So don't be discouraged. You know, if anything, be encouraged that relationships can be fixed by using the right tools, can be repaired by using the right tools. And by using these right tools, you can have those foundational conversations to rebuild and restore relationships that actually were destroyed by bad communication in the past. We've been experiencing that in our own lives with a few relationships just in the last short while. So relationships that you thought possibly were over, that came back to the table because of using some of these tools in crucial conversations. So they work.
Yeah, think about this. Maybe you've been this way, or maybe you know somebody and you observe their relationships with people, and the relationships have a lifespan. I'm sure all relationships have a lifespan. There's very few that are lifetime. And that's a beautiful thing if you have that. Kimberly and I moved around a lot when we were children. Her dad was kind of a mover, and my dad was somewhat of a mover. And so, you know, it's hard to get those lifetime relationships. But if you think about who are your most intimate relationships, are they over 10 years long? Well, the reason I bring that up is because you maybe have done this or observed this, where people have a lifespan that is shorter than the normal relationship. And it's because maybe they call themselves, I'm a truth teller. Well, what that means is I don't really care what people think. I'm just going to say what I think. And that is not about intimacy. That's not about reaching in intimacy, or to reach influence and intimacy. The goal is I'm going to be right. And that's what we talked about earlier, looking for that win. So the benefits of communication skills is to your relationships is, first, increased influence and intimacy. And by the way, if you care about people, you're going to speak words of life and not about words of death, to bring it back to our scripture. And then the second thing is it improves your trust and interdependency. By the way, this thing about relationships, when you get married and you go, you know, we're just two independent people living in the same space. No, it's about interdependency. I need Kimberly. Kimberly needs me. That interdependency is what marriage is about. You know, I don't want to say you complete me. Well, okay, whatever. But, you know, there is something that Kimberly brings to me that I don't have.
It's the power of team. It's in the workplace too. It's the power of team, and the word talks about two are better than one. So that speaks to the power of team. You know, it's not that we are lacking as a person without somebody else. God has created us to be all that we need and the potential to be all that we need to be. But there is so much more power when there's two or three joined together, or you know, more than two. It's like, you know, and in a marriage, that coming together, we've seen that the dynamics of when a couple works together and takes their uniqueness and their different styles of everything. Oftentimes opposites attract, but when those tools of communication are used to begin to build a relationship, man, those are some of the most dynamic people we've ever met. Couples.
Power couples. We've talked, there are some people like Mike and Carmen Meeks. You know, Mike
so opposite.
They're so opposite. And she is such a deep thinker, and Mike is really straightforward, honest,
Funny
great
and-
sense of humor, and she's got a great sense of humor
Yeah,
too.
she does.
But they're kind of a power
They're
couple.
so different.
And I love seeing a power couple. It doesn't mean they have a lot of money and they influence, the world and they're big charity givers. That's
No,
not
that's
what I'm
not the
talking.
point, yeah.
Power couple is they've taken their
Uniqueness.
differences and uniquenesses and made it work together. So the benefits of communication skills in your relationships increases influence and intimacy. Number 2, improves trust and interdependency, produce a power couple. And number 3, create an environment of honest communication. When you have communication skills, you will always have honest communication.
Right.
That's the environment. Now, sometimes you're going to slip into self-defensive or self-protection and maybe not be completely transparent and
Right.
honest with each other. But the goal is to have that environment of
Right.
honest communication.
Yeah.
So listen, our scripture for today was death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Think about how important communication is. We're kind of doing a book report.
Yeah.
A little book report on crucial conversations. I highly recommend if you're in any kind of relationship, whether it's troubled or successful or, you're really doing well, read this book and read it with your spouse or read it with your friend called Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. Great book on communication. They, don't look for a Christian book. It's not that, but it's really powerful. So we're doing a book report. We're running it through kind of a biblical grid and communicating the best that we can in our communication with you. So this is going to be a great series. I hope you'll join us on Hope Rescue. Invite your friends to listen to Hope Rescue Podcast at hoperescuepodcast.org. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.